Well, it's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, Minnesota, out there on the edge of the prairie, my hometown. It's been warm out there, warm enough so the people are now able to sleep at night with their windows open, which changes everything in a person's life, changes your dreams, and you no longer have dreams in which you are trapped, in which you are pitiful and helpless. You have these great, broad, wide-open dreams. It's the time of year of graduation at Lake Wobegon High School. When our young people leave, we assume they will. We hope that they will. Seniors cleared out their desks and their lockers of all their projects and their term papers last Friday, and then they went home to rest up for graduation, which was yesterday, last night. All of these young people, the parents look at them and it seems as if it were only a year or two since they first went off to school, since they were little kids working with their multiplication tables and learning their cursive writing and making those delicate loops that they've all forgotten now. Their handwriting looks as if their medications need to be adjusted somehow. But the graduates sat in their parents' backyards thinking grand thoughts, watching their parents put the vegetables into the garden, the squash and the cucumber and the tomatoes and the sweet corn. But these kids are beyond gardening now. They're thinking the extravagant thoughts of the young, getting ready to move off and see this beautiful world that we live in and take this opportunity. It's time. They need to go because they know us too well. They're able to work us too well. They work us like video machines. They just put in the quarter and they get the prize. We're no challenge to them anymore. We're just a game that they play. They push the buttons, or children do by the time they get to be 17 or 18, and they can instantly turn us into monsters anytime they want to, with fire coming out the tops of our heads. They can make us cry. It's easy. If you can't make your parents cry by the time you're 14, you're just not paying attention. It's time for them to get off and discover the magnificent indifference of the world, which doesn't care if you're eating the right things, doesn't care if you are lost, really does not care so much if you are happy or not. So you have to do things for their own sake and not simply do them to upset your parents. Time to stop doing stupid things in order to infuriate your parents and do stupid things for the stupidity itself. For itself. Drunkenness, the most stupid thing you can do, you should do it just for it itself and not because your parents told you not to. To take in whiskey and wine and beer and gin, and to lower your IQ and lower your inhibitions to where you can stand up and do things to outrage the bourgeoisie. Well, the bourgeoisie goes to bed so early they're not around to be upset by you. You have to do these things for the pleasure of them themselves, to enjoy being stupid and enjoy the illusion that drunkenness gives you that you are a free spirit and an artist, and then to enjoy the following day when God hits you with a 2x4 and you wake up and there are broken things inside your head and it hurts so bad, it hurts even just to turn your eyeballs off to the left. If you sneezed, it could kill you. After I graduated from high school, I got a summer job in the scullery. I was doing dishes in a hotel. The temperature was about 120 degrees down there. The waiters brought big trays of dishes and dumped them onto the big open window, and we rinsed off the plates and shoved them in racks and pushed them on through the conveyor belt and the silverware and all the rest. I lived with my Uncle Earl and my Aunt Myrna down in the cities. This summer of hard work for low pay. I was getting set to go off to the big state university and discover the great indifference of the world to my future. I sat on the porch at night talking to my Uncle Earl, who was a straight shooter in a family of very nervous people. He always told you what he thought. Other people in my family did not, because they were still thinking it, and they weren't sure what you might think of it if they did say so. We were a quiet family. We were a quiet family of people who had a very finely developed sense of potential disaster. My Aunt Myrna made the most perfect banana cream and lemon meringue pies that I ever had, and yet she was never satisfied with them. And when she brought them to the table and served them up to us, she was always bemoaning the fact that the lemons were just a little past their freshness, and the bananas were maybe just a little bit green, and she had used brown eggs instead of white, and it just was not the pie that she had hoped it would be. But my Uncle Earl sat there on his porch looking out at his perfect yard and listening to the baseball game and Herb Carneal on the radio, and remembering the great softball game that he and I had played in 1956 when he was on the married men's team and I was on the single men's team, and I played third base when he came up with men on base and the score tied in the 8th inning. And he took a big cut at a slow pitch, and he hit this hard line drive grounder right down the third base line. It bounced right on the line. It bounced once, and I backhanded it, and I braced my left foot, and I threw him out at first base. I'll always remember that because it was the only time I ever threw anybody out from third base. He said, best softball game I ever played, he said, was I was in the Civilian Conservation Corps. Boy, that was quite the deal. After I graduated from high school, all those young guys, we didn't have anything to do. There were no jobs, so the government put us to work, working in national parks, and we went off to the Grand Canyon, and we spent a whole summer building stone walls there along the south rim of the canyon. Boy, oh boy, that canyon. Boy, that's the most amazing thing I ever saw in my life. That was the best home run I ever hit, he said. We played there on the south rim. I hit the biggest home run I ever hit. It went right over that stone wall. I hit a home run into the Grand Canyon. We never found that ball. We went down the trail. Boy, oh boy, that was a game. He thought back on it. The Grand Canyon seemed like a long ways away until I got fired from my dishwashing job by the manager who had never liked me because he always found me reading off in the corner. He didn't approve of that. He didn't approve of people sitting, even if their work was done. He found me reading one day in late July, and he said that was my last day. And he gave me my pay. For 2 weeks, he gave me $200 in cash. I got in my car. I had a 56 Ford two-door. And suddenly I thought of the Grand Canyon. I thought, maybe this is my time to go see this. I think back on that night with absolute disbelief that I could have done something so bold and so brave. But nobody was expecting me home. The world was indifferent to where I went or what I did. So, I had money in my pocket. Gas was cheap. I just drove. I drove all night. The sun came up in Nebraska. I drove down through Colorado and up into the mountains and down that beautiful road that goes along the river into Durango and then down into Arizona. And I got to the Grand Canyon the next night. There was a big crowd on the South Rim, buses and tourists and people taking pictures and parents warning their children not to go down the trail. And I went down the trail. And the moment you got past the first switchback, all of the crowd and the tumult up on the rim disappeared, and you were in this eternal world of utter quiet, descending down through switchback after switchback, through great thousands of feet of rock formations and sandstone and beautiful trees, occasional hikers coming up past you, foreign languages coming up past you, French and German and Swedish, passing a few hikers, but down and down and down you went, all the way down to the oasis at the bottom. I got down there and I was worn out. I didn't know that the trip down is harder than the trip back up. I lay down there on a bench. It was dark. I thought to myself, I'm not sure I can make it back up. If my parents had been there, I would have said, I can't make it back up. But nobody was there. Nobody knew. Why should they? Why should they care? And so I started back up. And to head back up and realize that you can do it. You can make it 3,000 feet up, even though it is dark. There is a moon out. You can see. You thought it was impossible, but it's not impossible. You can do it. Your step quickens as you come up toward the surface. You are walking faster and faster, and you are passing other hikers on the trail, and you come up to the rim, and the tourists part ways for you to come through, you conquering hero who've been down to the bottom and come up in the dark. You feel this exaltation that you will feel later in your life when you finish writing a book, or when you finish some other big project, or when you send your children off to graduation. You feel this sense of a sort of grandeur that you didn't know before when you had your parents to trouble. A great sense of grandeur going down into the canyon and realizing how thin this little crust is on top of this little planet in the cosmos, so small it doesn't have much effect in the great universe, and we have even less effect on this great earth. We go down through this little thin crust, this little smear, this little scum on the pond that we are. We go down and we see that this planet has endured so much, so many ice ages, so much turmoil to crush all of this rock, so much upheaval. This world which is indifferent to us, and its indifference gives us a sort of grandeur. We carry our home on our backs. We're independent. We're indomitable. Even as the light fades and even as we come towards the end, nonetheless, we're still looking. We're still seeing. We're still trying to figure things out. Godspeed to all the graduates. That's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, all the children be